Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. I'm going to give you a crazy scenario. Imagine that you're Andy Reid, the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going into your first game of the year thinking that Patrick Mahomes is going to be your quarterback. Then the morning of the game, Mahomes announces that he's leaving the team. He's unhappy about something and decides to just walk away, leaving Reid to start Chad Henne at quarterback. And then 1 week later, Reid goes into the next game thinking that Henne is now his quarterback. The morning of that game, Henne announces that he's leaving the team. Two quarterbacks leaving the team on the day of the game within a week of each other. Something like this seems absolutely absurd and ridiculous. This doomsday scenario seems completely unrealistic, and seems like something that could never happen. So why do I bring this up? Because as it turns out, something like this actually happened. In 1971, the New York Giants had just about the most bizarre start to a season imaginable, where in the span of a week, the starting quarterback and then the new starting quarterback quit the team on the day that they were supposed to start. And this is the story behind the drama. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context as to who the original quarterback is, why he was upset to begin with, and why this whole situation created an unbelievable domino effect that even half a century later is still somewhat hard to believe. The starting quarterback in question was Fran Tarkenton. Tarkenton had been with the Giants since 1967, when he was acquired in a trade from the Minnesota Vikings. Tarkenton was already one of the better quarterbacks in football at the time of this acquisition, and really was one of the first of his kind with his unique playing style. But when he joined the Giants, his numbers and his play exploded, and he took the Giants from one of the laughingstocks of the league from the mid-1960s to a somewhat respectable team. While the Giants still weren't great under Tarkenton by any means, that was no fault of his. In 1967, he made it to the Pro Bowl while throwing for 3,088 yards and 29 touchdowns, finishing 4th in the league in yardage and tied for 2nd in the league in touchdowns. His passer rating of 85.9 was also 2nd best in the league, and less than 2 points shy of Sonny Jurgensen for the top total in football. He followed that up in 1968 by making another Pro Bowl while finishing 3rd in the league in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. Then in 1969, he made another Pro Bowl while finishing 2nd in passing yards with just under 3,000, 2nd in passing touchdowns with 23, just one off of Roman Gabriel for the league lead, and 2nd in passer rating. And in 1970, the first year since the merger became finalized, Tarkenton had another fantastic season, where he made the 4th straight Pro Bowl of his career while finishing inside the top 5 in passing touchdowns and passer rating, and finishing 2nd in passing yards. You could have made a legitimate argument that over the second half of the 1960s, there was not a more consistent quarterback in all of football than Tarkenton. And by this point at the turn of the decade, maybe Tarkenton was the best quarterback in football. When you're putting up those numbers and leading 9 game-winning drives in a 2-year stretch, you're doing something right. The only problem? He wasn't being paid like it. And heading into 1971, this contract situation created some absolutely chaotic drama. Prior to the 1971 season, Tarkenton had signed a series of 1-year contracts with New York for somewhere in the ballpark of $100,000. As part of the 1970 contract that he signed, the Giants held his rights in 1971, so he couldn't become a free agent, even though free agency back then would have been vastly different from what it is today. However, there was no figure attached to that 1971 total. That was up for the team and the player to negotiate. Tarkenton went to camp in 1971, expecting that the Giants would throw him a good number and give him the money that he was looking for. And that did not happen. We don't know what the exact number was that the Giants threw out, but Tarkenton was insulted by the offer. Apparently, Tarkenton wanted a 6-figure loan, somewhere in the ballpark of $200,000, and the Giants refused to give that to him. And he was so insulted by the offer that he flat out left the team. The Giants were scheduled to take on the Houston Oilers at the Astrodome in a preseason game on August 9th, and Tarkenton flew down with the team for practices and workouts. Not even 24 hours before kickoff, Tarkenton packed his bags and left. Now, Tarkenton made it very clear that this was not a retirement. This is not like one of the 10,000 fake retirement videos I've done. Tarkenton said he had no grievance whatsoever against the Giants, that he wanted to play for the team in 1971, and that he wouldn't have come to camp if he didn't. But he just felt that the number that the Giants were offering was not good enough, and he didn't want to risk anything and play the preseason without a contract. So once negotiations reached an impasse, he left. What's bizarre is that owner Wellington Maris said that Tarkenton was making a mistake by announcing his retirement, but if that's what he wanted to do, that was his prerogative. Even though Tarkenton explicitly told Mara he wasn't retiring. Why Mara made that statement, I have no clue, but Tarkenton made it very clear that the only thing involved was his contract, and there were no external factors at play here. But now with Tarkenton out and at his home in Atlanta for the time being, they had to scramble and prepare as if Tarkenton was not coming back. And with that, on the day of the game, the backup quarterback became the starter. That quarterback was a man by the name of Dick Shiner. Yes, that is a completely real name. I'm not making that up. Shiner had been in the NFL since 1964, and had been around a few places, playing in Washington, then Cleveland, and then Pittsburgh. He was Pittsburgh's starting quarterback in 1968 and 1969, and even though his team was terrible, going 3-16-1 in his 20 starts over those 2 seasons, his numbers weren't awful. He was a fairly pedestrian quarterback who definitely made a serviceable backup. The Giants acquired his services in 1970, and in the regular season, he didn't play a whole lot, throwing just 12 passes, with 11 of them coming in relief during a 31-3 loss to the Los Angeles Rams at the end of the season. However, just like he was in Pittsburgh a few years ago, Shiner was now the first-string quarterback. He was the man in charge for the time being. 1 week later, you guessed it, he quit the team. At this point, Shiner was New York's quarterback, and head coach Alex Webster was pretty satisfied about that, at least publicly. He said, "I'm very happy with Shiner. I think he can take the Giants to a championship." Forgot to mention, he said this after the Giants got absolutely blown out by the Oilers in the preseason with Shiner under center. The Giants lost 35-6, with Shiner playing the first half and posting just 3 points. Still, it didn't seem like there was anything they could do about it until the Tarkenton situation resolved itself. Shiner was going to be under center for New York for the time being, however long that was. Turns out, that wasn't too long at all. A few days later, Tarkenton returned to the team, apologized for what he called a hasty move, and signed a contract for the 1971 season on the original terms. What that exactly meant, we don't entirely know, but it presumably means that he did not get that $200,000 loan he reportedly asked for. When Tarkenton returned, everything was not water under the bridge. He was the backup quarterback at the moment for Shiner, though it was clear that Tarkenton would eventually win that starting job back. However, this meant that Shiner was going to be starting the team's second preseason game, which would be later that week on August 15th against the New England Patriots. On August 14th, the Giants worked out at CW Post, with the practice ending at 10:30 a.m. At 1 o'clock, they boarded their flight from JFK to Boston. Sometime in that 2-hour stretch, Dick Shiner had quit the team and disappeared. For the second straight week, the man who was supposed to be starting the game left not even 24 hours before the game was scheduled to kick off. Here we go again. Why did Shiner leave the team? If things weren't confusing already, they might get weird here, so just stick with me for a few moments because I promise you it'll all be worth it. When Tarkenton came back, Shiner requested a trade. He felt that he should be starting, and he knew that he wasn't going to get his opportunity to be a starter as long as Tarkenton was running the show. Because of this, Giants officials wanted to see what his trade value would be, and wanted to see what teams would potentially be interested in acquiring Shiner's services. On August 13th, they put him on waivers. The reason that they did it on Friday was because a team has 24 hours to remove a player from waivers, but Saturday and Sunday don't count, so technically, they had the whole weekend to see what other teams thought of him. This is supposed to be a secretive process that tons of teams throughout the league do. But as it turns out, with Shiner, this process wasn't so secretive. That Friday, the Giants placed Shiner on waivers, but they announced earlier in the week that he was going to be starting the game against the Patriots. Patriots head coach John Mazur was talking with reporters and said how surprised he was to see Shiner's name on the waiver list since he was going to be starting. Now, the Pats had no interest in Shiner, as they drafted Jim Plunkett first overall, and he was going to be their starter. And Shiner was only going to go to a team where he had a chance of being the number 1 guy on the depth chart. But when the press got word of Mazur's comments, they posted the story, which eventually made its way back to Shiner, who found out about it and was so angry that he left the team. The whole situation can be summed up like this. Shiner requests a trade. The Giants look for a trade partner. Shiner gets so upset that the Giants are looking at trading him that he quits the team before he's supposed to start. Makes perfect sense. But now, once again, head coach Alex Webster was in an awful spot. The man who was supposed to be the starting quarterback was now no longer with the team after leaving not even 24 hours before kickoff. Webster was angry that the whole thing got leaked, since this process was supposed to be confidential, and said that he tried to talk Shiner out of his decision, but Shiner just left and went home without saying a word. And keep in mind that all I've talked about so far are the quarterbacks. In the span of a month, you have 5 players on the Giants just mysteriously walk out and pack their bags. Aside from Tarkenton and Shiner, you had offensive tackle Joe Toffoli, who was acquired in the trade with the Rams, dressed from the Patriots game but didn't play because he was unfamiliar with the offense having just gotten there, and then when the team returned to CW Post, hid his bags in the bushes and left. You had defensive end Wes Grant, who left the team after getting into a disagreement with the coaching staff. He was traded to the Dolphins, and then traded back to the Giants after Don Shula couldn't stand his attitude after just 1 day. And you had specialist Bill Johnson, who quit for no specified reason. 5 players in 1 month.
This was the most bizarre start to a season imaginable, and as you can probably guess, it was a really bad sign of things to come in 1971. I don't think it's going to come as too much of a surprise to anyone that when you have a preseason as tumultuous as what the Giants went through, where 5 players quit, including 2 quarterbacks on the day they were supposed to start, that you're not going to have a good regular season. You're playing behind 8 different 8 balls with a start that poor. And even though the Giants started 2-1, everything quickly crumbled after that. They lost 4 straight games to drop to 2-5, and then after winning 2 straight to somewhat salvage their season, lost their final 5 games to finish at 4-10. The season was a disaster. The defense was the second worst in football, having allowed close to 26 points per game, and the defense allowed at least 17 points in every single game, and they allowed an abysmal 83 points over the final 2 games of the season. For the first time in his career with the Giants, Tarkenton was legitimately terrible, throwing 11 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. The offense was held to 7 or less in 5 games. The leading rusher on the team was Bobby Duhan, who had 344 yards. Just about the only bright spot the entire season was their opening day victory against the Green Bay Packers, where they won 42-40 in a shootout where Rich Houston, a cornerback turned wide receiver, had 3 touchdowns out of nowhere. You can learn more about that game by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But other than that, absolutely nothing went right for New York. Are we ever going to see anything like the 1971 Giants again? Probably not. 1 starting quarterback walking out practically the day of the game is already bizarre enough. 2 starting quarterbacks doing this is absurd. And for 2 starting quarterbacks to do this in back-to-back weeks is almost comical. Alex Webster was not a bad coach by any means, but let's be honest. Whether it was him or Vince Lombardi or anyone else, no one was winning with the Giants in 1971 with how dysfunctional they were. Everything about the start of that season was a really bad comedy. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JRGator9 and subscribe to 60 Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping with the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.